John Keats. A brief introduction. John Keats, born on October 31, 1795, in London, England, is one of the most celebrated poets of the English Romantic movement. Though his literary career lasted only a few short years before his untimely death at the age of 25, Keats' works have had a lasting impact on English literature and are revered for their vivid imagery, emotional intensity, and philosophical depth. Keats' life, marked by personal tragedies and struggles, greatly influenced his poetry, which is often characterized by a preoccupation with beauty, transience, and mortality. Early life and education. John Keats was born to Thomas and Frances Jennings Keats, the eldest of 4 surviving children. His family was neither wealthy nor poor. His father worked as a stableman and later managed a livery stable. However, Keats' early life was beset by tragedy. In 1804, when Keats was just 8 years old, his father died after falling from a horse. This was followed by the death of his mother in 1810 from tuberculosis, a disease that would later claim Keats himself. These early losses had a profound effect on Keats and contributed to the recurring themes of suffering and mortality in his poetry. Despite his difficult circumstances, Keats received a good education at John Clarke's School in Enfield. It was here that Keats developed a passion for literature, particularly for Greek and Roman mythology, Shakespeare, and the works of Renaissance poets such as Edmund Spenser. His exposure to classical literature would later shape his poetic style and subject matter. After leaving school in 1810, Keats was apprenticed to Thomas Hammond, a surgeon and apothecary in Edmonton. Medicine was seen as a practical profession, and it offered a stable career path. However, while Keats did well in his medical studies, his true passion lay in writing poetry. By 1816, Keats had become deeply involved in the literary scene in London, and his growing circle of friends, including the poet Leigh Hunt and artist Benjamin Haydon, encouraged him to pursue poetry seriously. Literary career and influences. Keats' decision to devote himself to poetry came at a time when Romanticism was flourishing in England. The Romantic movement, which emerged in the late 18th century, emphasized individual emotion, nature, imagination, and the rejection of industrialization and rationalism. Keats was particularly inspired by the works of William Wordsworth, Samuel Taylor Coleridge, and Lord Byron, all of whom were prominent Romantic poets. Keats' early poems appeared in The Examiner, a liberal journal edited by Leigh Hunt. In 1817, his first volume of poetry, simply titled Poems, was published. The collection did not achieve much success, but it showed signs of Keats' emerging voice. His early work was heavily influenced by Spenser and Milton, with a particular focus on sensual imagery and the celebration of beauty. However, it was Keats' development over the next few years that would establish him as a major poet. His second major work, Endymion, 1818, an ambitious narrative poem based on Greek mythology, expressed his belief in the power of beauty as a means of transcending human suffering. The poem, which opens with the famous line, "A thing of beauty is a joy forever," demonstrated Keats' growing preoccupation with the tension between the ideal and the real, between eternal beauty and the fleeting nature of human life. Though Endymion was criticized for being overly ambitious and sometimes disjointed, it marked a significant step forward for Keats as a poet. The work reflected his philosophical exploration of the nature of beauty, a theme that would dominate his later poetry. The year of the great odes, 1819. The year 1819 is often considered the pinnacle of Keats' poetic career, during which he composed some of his most famous works, known as the Great Odes. These include Ode to a Nightingale, Ode on a Grecian Urn, Ode to Psyche, Ode on Melancholy, and to Autumn. These odes are remarkable for their lyricism, rich imagery, and profound meditations on art, beauty, mortality, and the human condition. In Ode to a Nightingale, Keats contrasts the timeless, immortal beauty of the nightingale's song with the transitory nature of human life. The poem reflects Keats' longing for escape from the pain and suffering of existence, yet it ultimately acknowledges the impossibility of such escape. Similarly, in Ode on a Grecian Urn, Keats explores the tension between the static perfection of art and the inevitable passage of time. The urn, with its scenes of eternal beauty, serves as a metaphor for the paradox of art. It preserves a moment of beauty forever, but it also reminds us of the fleeting nature of real-life experiences. Keats' odes showcase his mastery of language and form, as well as his ability to blend sensory richness with intellectual depth. They are considered some of the finest examples of lyric poetry in the English language, and they embody the romantic ideal of finding truth through beauty. Personal struggles and tragic love. While Keats was achieving artistic success in 1819, his personal life was marked by hardship. Financial difficulties plagued him throughout his life, and he often struggled to support himself through his writing. In addition, his health was rapidly deteriorating. In 1819, Keats began to show symptoms of tuberculosis, the same disease that had claimed his mother and brother. During this time, Keats also fell in love with Fanny Brawne, a neighbor in Hampstead. Their relationship was passionate but troubled, largely because of Keats' illness and financial instability. Although they became secretly engaged, Keats realized that he could not marry her due to his declining health. His letters to Fanny reveal a deep emotional attachment but also a sense of frustration and despair, as he recognized that his dreams of happiness and domestic life were slipping away. Death and legacy. By 1820, Keats' health had worsened significantly, and his friends advised him to travel to Italy in hopes that the warmer climate would improve his condition. In September 1820, he left for Rome, accompanied by his friend Joseph Seven. However, his condition continued to deteriorate, and he died on February 23, 1821, at the age of 25. Keats was buried in the Protestant cemetery in Rome, and his epitaph, which he requested, reads, "Here lies one whose name was writ in water," reflecting his fear that he would be forgotten. Contrary to his fears, Keats' reputation grew significantly after his death. Initially overlooked by the literary establishment, his works were later recognized for their artistic merit, and he is now considered one of the greatest poets in the English language. Keats' influence extends beyond Romanticism, and his emphasis on the sensual experience of beauty has inspired countless writers and artists. Keats' poetic philosophy, negative capability. One of Keats' most significant contributions to literary thought is the concept of negative capability. In a letter to his brothers, Keats defined this idea as the capacity to remain in uncertainty, mystery, and doubt without striving for logical explanations. For Keats, true poetic genius lay in embracing the ambiguities of life, rather than trying to impose rigid meanings or answers. This idea is central to many of his poems, which often explore the tension between beauty and suffering, permanence and change, without offering clear resolutions. In conclusion, John Keats remains a towering figure in English literature. His poetry, with its rich language, vivid imagery, and profound philosophical insights, continues to resonate with readers today. Despite his short life and relatively modest output, Keats' work stands as a testament to the enduring power of beauty, and the human spirit's ability to find meaning in the face of life's impermanence.